I went to my countdown. Hi, everybody. Yehuda Shamroth here tonight, speaking to you from Netanya, Israel. And sorry about the people who are waiting online for us. We had a little technical difficulty in the beginning. We always want to welcome Rabbi Pinchas Winston, our brilliant rabbi who leads us in all kinds of topics. So yes, you are. It's okay. You can be modest. Regarding all kinds of Jewish topics, especially the end of days, which is what we like to hear about weekly. And don't forget to please check his website, which I will get right this week, sharnunproductions.org, and that's spelled SHAARNUN productions.org, where you can read essays, books, and videos on Torah topics and current events from a more mystical Torah perspective than on the usual wonderful website, 36.org. And as we know, Rabbi Winston has written over 110 books, and he doesn't stop. And we have a friend in Ramat Beit Shemesh who said recently that Rabbi Winston writes faster than anyone can read them. So get your books now and get prepared for the Geula. And thank you so much for joining us, Rabbi Winston.
My pleasure. Thank you. When Moshe Rabbeinu went down to Mitzrayim to free the Jewish people, which of course is the paradigm of all Geulas. Pesach is coming up, and what people don't realize is that it never really ended. Yetzias Mitzrayim, the going of Egypt, is a work in progress that's going on to this very day. They bring the pasuk from Micha, the rabbis and the Kubalim bring the pasuk that says that you will leave the final exile, the redemption will be like in the days of leaving Egypt, which just sounds like there'll be a lot of miracles, just like there were a lot of miracles at the time of leaving Egypt. But on a deeper level, it means that whatever we didn't complete at that time will be finally completed by the final redemption. So it is really the one and only exile and redemption that we're talking about. The other ones, Babel, Madai, Yavan, and even Edom, are all subsets, all pieces of the one from Mitzrayim. And also, as we have said many times before, I don't like to repeat myself, but we have to do it anyhow, and that is that Mitzrayim is more of a concept than a place. We associate Egypt with Mitzrayim because it was the first Mitzrayim that the Torah talks about, but Mitzrayim is a concept that existed before Egypt and even after the Jewish people left Mitzrayim, Egypt. And it is any place, because the word Meitzer Yam is the basis of Mitzrayim. Yam is always the Nun Shor Bina. Meitzer means a boundary, to confine. It has to do with Kabbalah, to do with the way the spheres are all set up. But in general, any place that stifles Torah, any place that constricts the knowledge of Torah is a Mitzrayim in its time. And that could be America today or the whole Western world for that matter. And the way things are going right now, with how the nations are turning against the Jewish people and putting pressure on us and talking about boycotting and all the things that years ago we thought would never happen in their lifetime, and everything just turns around very fast, right? Clearly, that Mitzrayim may be a much larger concept than simply one people, one nation. In the beginning, the entire Jewish nation was only in one location, in Mitzrayim, and therefore the exile was there and the redemption was from there. The next time it happened in a really big way was in Babel. It was Persia, was a larger place, and but really Europe was much later in history, but it was another major turning point in Jewish history, and then we were spread all over Europe. And so the exile was all over Europe, and the redemption was from all over Europe, so to speak. And then finally now we're all over the world. So the next level up is the entire world. So the entire world can have a status of Mitzrayim. And the Paro could be one entire nation that leads them and causes them to do whatever they're going to do. So ongoing. So Moshe goes down to free the Jewish people. God sends him down. He didn't want to go for 7 days he argues with Hashem, saying, no, I'm not going. And then finally, after 7 days, God puts his foot down, which is a big foot, And he says to Moshe Rabbeinu, you're going, that's the end of the story. I gave you 7 days to talk about this. Now, end the discussion, the debate's over, you're going. And he goes down, and he does his job exactly as he's supposed to do it, and as prophesied, as God had told him, that he would not succeed in the beginning, but towards the end, because there had to be the 10 plagues. But what he doesn't know, and he doesn't realize until after the fact, was that when he goes into Mitzrayim, he actually makes the situation worse. So you could call his mission, from the standpoint of the Jewish people, from their perspective, a failure. They thought that when he said we're going out, it means now, even though he knew that 10 plagues were going to come, but he didn't know that there'd been an interruption of 3 months. We used to go back to Midian. I thought it was 6 months, something 3 months. Go back to Midian and hang out for a while until God sends them once again. And the main reason that this had to happen that way, that God sent Moshe down to fail in the eyes of the people. He didn't fail in the eyes of God. He did exactly what he was told to do. God had controlled the entire situation. God had that happen the way it did. Just that it was a surprise to those who didn't know what the plan was. And Moshe failed from their perspective. So when he came back the next time, they didn't even talk to him. They were kotzer ruach from the slavery had broken them, and their spirit had been broken because of all the despair they suffered because of the failure. Because one thing to be enslaved, it's another thing to think you're going out, only to find that it all collapses in the end. But the point that was being made that was essential to this entire thing was that nobody can free the Jewish people but God himself. Even if we do tshuva, doesn't make a difference what we do with, but it's only God. And Moshe Rabbeinu was an intermediary, but you see how easy it is for people to start putting their trust in the intermediary. Look how many religions have sprung up because of that. And God wanted to make it eminently clear that this Geula is not coming because of Moshe, maybe through Moshe, but not because of him, only because of Hashem. So therefore, Moshe, everything had to fail. Everything that they looked towards, that depended upon, that was any sense of hope that they had to fail. So that when finally they went out, they knew it was only God, only Hashem. And that we've spoken about this point. This is going to part of this idea of strategy for the end of days, that's what has to happen. That's what to get to that point. Because how else is the world going to realize that God is one, that God is king over the entire land, and God is one? So therefore, what we're witnessing right now, that the nations of the world, I mean, did anyone really think that America was going to be our ally forever? Just because 5.5 million Jews are living there, because the strategy of the superpowers was that since America couldn't get Egypt, because Egypt went with Russia, so that Israel was like by default the only one that America could side with, and then there was a relationship. But did anyone? I mean, governments come and they go and they change, and the policies change, and the people change, and the attitudes change, and history changes. Did anyone think it was going to stay that way forever? We hope that it will. We like the fact that it can, but no one. I mean, we know if you stick around long enough, you will see the situation go south. And if it's going south and you stick around long enough, you'll see the situation turn to become better. But that's the way it works. So it's not a surprise. It's just uncomfortable. We don't like pain. We don't like disappointment. But you see, how much we depended upon America to give us a sense of confidence, to give us a sense of support, of brotherhood, and that we're not alone in this world. And as they back down and move away from us, and the world starts to blame, I mean, it's absolutely remarkable. It really, this is the klal, right? Me'es Hashem haisa zos, he nifos be'einenu. Whatever is wondrous in our eyes, and you go back, how could that be? That means it's overt divine providence. So what we're witnessing today, even though it's happening with the Teva, it's not logical. It doesn't make sense. Even, at least for the facts on the ground. Now, Hashem may use very natural means to accomplish that. For example, he may have technology take over the minds of people, so they stop thinking for themselves and thinking clearly, and become lazy and don't do research anymore, and not truth seekers, and have science undermine belief in God, on all these different things, so that people will be cut loose and be able to come to a incorrect conclusion about history that they're doing right now and turning against the Jewish people. That may be the mechanism. That may be the means that Hashem has created to bring it about. So we can't always see that it's him directly, so that we have free will to choose to see it and to respond to it. But it is part of the process. It always has been. That's the way it's happened in the past. I mean, in Spain, the Abarbanel was the finance minister in his time, the Duke Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. And they got along great. And it was wonderful. And the Jews had a golden era, unlike other golden eras, financially, spiritually. A lot of Rishonim came from there, and it was a haven for Jews for a significant period of time. But you have to know, the longer you stayed, the more chance it was going to turn around. And then the winds began to blow. Christianity began to spread, and the anti-Semitism didn't start. It had been going on the entire time, but started to infiltrate more areas. So eventually, one priest turned the minds and the hearts of the Duke and the Queen against the Jewish people, and everybody, including the Abarbanel, was forced to flee for their life and leave behind their belongings. And they themselves questioned, the people later on, they asked themselves why Hashem did this to them. And some said it's because they had considered the possibility that now that they had all this money, all this wealth, that maybe they should focus on rebuilding the Yishuv of Eretz Israel, which was barren at that time of Jews and buildings, and there was no plant life, there was no growth, so to speak, and they had the money, the means to start turning that around, and they thought that maybe they should do that, and they didn't. They chose to stay, so they blamed it on that. Perhaps they didn't know for sure. They didn't have prophets, but they thought that may be part of the reason, and it may have been part of the reason. But even still, that may have been the means and the mechanism to bring it about. But the bottom line is that's what had to happen. That's part of the process. We go someplace, we're there for a reason. There are things we have to pay attention to. For example, that anti-Semitism, as has been is clear from Jewish history. The evidence is all over. Going back to Yaakov Avinu, is usually a signal that an exile has come to an end. So get out, pack up. And Jewish history, we're not called the wandering Jews for no reason. And it's not just because we wandered in the desert for 40 years, but we've wandered from country to country to country. Anybody with our history should be ready to leave, even in the good times. Make plans for it. And I'm sure there are many people who have done that. I'm sure there are many people who pay attention to these things and take it to heart and are serious about it and somehow talks to them, and maybe they have the means financially or don't, but especially the ones that do, probably buy apartments and transfer money, make sure that if the time comes, they can get out as quickly as possible and with as much as they possibly can. But so many other people, until this very day, until this very moment, are still believing that the exile can go on for hundreds of years more, and that this will blow over and life will get better once again, and let's just hunker down and wait till the whole thing happens. It's not the way it works, and that's why we always get trapped. But anyhow, that's just a point, also very relevant to the Haggadah, the Seder coming up, because one of the statements we make is that we say that everyone has to look at themselves as if they too left Mitzrayim, and the pshat on that is that if our ancestors had not gone out, then we wouldn't be here today to make the Pesach Seder and be Jewish. Some people might say that would have been a better thing. But we know anybody who appreciates Torah, appreciates God, appreciates the opportunity, the relationship, knows it's the most wonderful gift in the world. It might be difficult at times, but still the most wonderful gift in the world. So therefore, we're grateful that we left Mitzrayim. But the deeper understanding is that we've been living Mitzrayim the entire time. We never fully left, even though physically 1/5, 4/5 died in the plague of darkness, 1/5 did go out. But they physically went out. You see, they go in the desert. They start yearning to go back at some point. They're not. It's like Lot's wife looking back towards stone. What does that tell you? That even though she's running away, her heart's back there. She left it back in stone. And likewise, a lot of people left their hearts back in Mitzrayim. And we'll ask the question and say, well, how? I mean, we're going to freedom. Yeah, but you're going to a desert. It's not like you're going to a 5-star hotel. It's not like you're going to some built-up community. You're going into the desert where there's nothing. It's not only nothing, but it's dangerous. And your only hope is God. Okay, you took around some provisions for a month, but there's not a lot of provisions, and there's millions of people to take care of. It's not, just running an organized city is difficult. Running a city in the desert is even more difficult. So it was a big step. It was a big leap. And some people would prefer staying back where the slavery went, especially since Mitzrayim was pretty much destroyed at that point. But they would prefer it. And we know hostages, and people have been kidnapped over long periods of time, develop relationships, and you get used to things. It's amazing what people can get used to, especially when they have to face the unknown. And that seems even scarier for them. So, that's all part of the mentality that we're supposed to go into the Haggadah with, knowing that we are a continuation of that redemption from Mitzrayim that hopefully is about to come to a conclusion after thousands of years of it being a work in progress. So we were talking about things that we have to do in advance, protection, and there's a lot of work, there's a lot of things to look at, but that we can be working in the meantime because the main point to all of this, if it's only, if all the negativity, all the bad that happens is only because that God's angry at us, he wants to punish us, he wants to destroy us, God forbid, then there's nothing to talk about. There's nothing to do. It doesn't make a difference how good you are, how bad you are. It's going to happen anyhow. But that's not the case with God. Everything that God does from start to finish, all of history, when it comes to the Jewish people, is for one reason and one reason only. And that's tikkun, to fix things up, to prepare things for the ultimate good that's supposed to start, in Yemos Mashiach and continue on, get better and better and better as it goes to the world to come. And up and up, and Kabbalah talks about these things. It's an amazing thing. I went to Yeshiva for many years. It's as if it didn't exist. And you read the Rishonim and the Charonim, and they don't talk about these things. It doesn't exist. You only find these things in the Sifrei Kabbalah, where they talk about these things. And then all of a sudden your eyes are, whoa, wow, this is something I thought that no one knows about, that we can't know about, we shouldn't know about. It turns out that there are people who do know about it, and in quite a lot of detail. And though it's not as much detail as we'd like, because we'd like to, a preview of the world to come and see it, that's way beyond our capacity. But it's still a lot of information to know that affects your life now and encourage you, inspire you to do, other, great things. But that's because of that reason, because everything's about tikkun, the Chavei Mashiach, the war of, because look, I mean, even the birth pangs that a woman goes through birth is tied back to the dust of Hara. And when God did that, he wasn't saying, well, you should have done that because you did that. I'm going to make you suffer for that, just to make you suffer. That's not how God works. He did this because he was saying this is the type of thing that has to happen for the sake of tikkun, of womanhood, for the sake of all history. It's like man has to go through whatever he has to go through for the sake of all mankind to fix up. It's tikkun, rectification. That's what it's always about. So if it's about rectification, then you can do things in advance to rectify yourself on your own terms. It's like making aliyah, for example. That there are people who've been making aliyah for the last. I mean, we have to all end up. Those who are still living and still standing in the Messianic era have to all end up in Eretz Yisrael. Yay! That's the way it's supposed to be. If you like that and you're yearning for that, that's a happy thing. For a lot of people, it's like, what? Me? Do I have to go? Can't we stay here and make a little, kind of a satellite community in Lakewood or someplace, in Gateshead? No, everybody has to come to Eretz Yisrael at some point in time. So some people begin. They process. The Vilna Gaon in his time already in his 5500, which was 1740, when he was 20 years of age. Boom, just like that. This is the time. We have to start the process of kibbutz galus, and he sent his talmidim to begin rebuilding the yishuv, and they had to start from nothing and in terrible, dangerous conditions. And here we are today, down the road from what they began back at that time. He saw it, he responded to it, and it's been going on the entire time. There's been waves of aliyah, tens of thousands in different periods of Jewish history since then until today, and of course millions after the Holocaust. And some people, who they had no choice. They're getting out of Russia, they're leaving Europe, so this is the place to settle. But there's lots of Americans and Canadians and British people who could have stayed. The communities are still there. They could have stayed, but they decided that they're moving to Israel now in their lifetime on their terms. And they put their house on the market and they sold it for a relatively decent price. They bought a house here at a price that hopefully they were able to afford based upon what they sold over there, and began lives in Eretz Israel. And there were struggles that there isn't in any new city, but in Eretz Israel, sometimes a couple extra, getting used to the language and the mentality and things like that. But they did it. They persevered and they did it. And here they are, established, living in Israel and loving it and enjoying it. And it was three things are required, three Asurim, the Gemara says, not a surprise. One of them is Eretz Israel, and they paid their dues and they acquired Eretz Israel. But when people had to leave Europe, and when it became clear that there's no getting better, not until it gets a lot worse, and they had to leave, they just packed up and left. They didn't even pack up. They couldn't even take that much with them because that wasn't the situation. Those were the conditions. And that will happen too. More than likely, you can assume that's going to happen again in this end of exile as well. So the people who got to do it over the last 25, 30, 40, 50, 100, whatever years have been doing it more or less on their own terms, at their own pace. And it's been very comfortable and enjoyable. And that's the way to do it. Where there are other people waiting too late the last second are going to have to do it very quickly and maybe leave behind and suffer the pain of having to know that what they worked for doesn't go with them. But that's the choice that we've had throughout history. But if we understand that this is the way Jewish history works and we accept that and then we start to plan for it, so then we can mitigate that. Those people mitigated it. They did it early enough before that demand was placed upon them because of historic needs. And the same thing is true of other things as well. So last week we spoke about how the whole point of history is the revelation of God, to see God as one and that he is literally behind everything, not being fooled by the news, not being fooled by Hamas, not being fooled by the president of the United States of America or his wife or our own government or the leftists who are doing this, all this noise that people are making that distracts us away from the reality that it's all God pulling the strings like a puppeteer. And if a person you have to work on that. I mean, that's the most difficult thing to do because this world is very distracting and very convincing. So it takes a lot of work to get to the point where a person can actually do that, right? So that's one thing. The next point for tonight, right, is to understand what the purpose of history is, and that is the point of life is to become fitting vessels for this level of revelation, right? And the next point that goes with it really is, well, put these 3 points together. They're really separate points, but they go together. The point of Torah, we'll explain this in a second, to spiritually refine a person's body while rectifying their soul. And the third point is the point of Chevle Mashiach is to winnow out the spiritually unfit. So we have these 3 points, right? Number one is that we're here to become fitting vessels to receive the light of God. That's the end game. That's going to happen. This process of refinement, according to Kabbalah, has been going on since creation, but it's been going on behind the scenes until Mashiach comes. Once Mashiach comes, it'll come out more in the open, and we'll just become more spiritually refined and more spiritually refined. This is Rabbi Alexandri said in the Gemara. He says to God, he had a special prayer he put in the end of Shemona Esrei where he said to God, Rabbanu Shalom, Master of the universe, right? You know that it's our fervent desire to serve you. That's what we're here to do. That's the essence of who we are. But what stops us? The source should be Isa, which is very appropriate for this time of year, right? That's the source of Chumetz. And Shibud Malchus. The source should be Isa means the Yetzer Hara, because it's like yeast and dough. It causes it to expand and become bloated, right? Bread is bloated matzah. It's air in the matzah. The yeast causes the induction of air into the dough, and it causes it to expand and become bigger, and that's like a bloated personality. It's like being what you're not. And that's the mistake that people make. So on Pesach, we get back to essentials to who we are by going back to the matzah, where it represents our soul, our simplicity, our pashtus, as the Maharal explains, because matzah is just flour and water, right? It's just Pashu, you can't get any simpler as a food, basically, in terms of a combination than flour, just flour and water. And that corresponds to the world to come, which is also sublime simplicity. So that's the freedom that Pesach gives us to go back to be who we are. We actually are enslaved more than anything else by what we think we have to be to fit into the world and to please other people. We're like actors, constantly, method actors, constantly doing things that it's not really who we are in essence. And we know it. Because the moment that we do something that's completely us, and it can be accidental sometimes, there's a sense of wholeness, of freedom, of excitement, of life force that you have. But the rest of the time we feel dragged down and held back because something's always pulling at us, making us have to do something or be something that we're not really in essence. And Pesach comes to free us from that predisposition to be something else that we're not. But the process itself of what we call birur, of refinement, right? The Verera is to clarify something. Brer is a choice because you're making a decision between one thing and another thing. But the process of birur, of rectification through separation. In other words, the world was created already with the reality of good and evil mixed together, but it wasn't over all of creation. When Adam ate from the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra, the tree of knowledge, good and evil, he caused the spreading of the reality of good and evil combined together to all of creation, including us. So even human beings are now considered to be on the level of the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra. We ourselves are an Eitz Hadas Tov Ra. Anything that has a combination is part of this idea of the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra. And to rectify everything, to make it the way it's supposed to be, you have to extract the good from the bad so that the bad will die out, because the bad lives off the good too. So if you can separate the good from the bad, the sparks from the spiritual waste product, the waste, the klipas, they'll die anyhow on their own, because they live also off the holiness. So by getting to who we are in essence, by rectifying our kli, what does it mean to rectify the kli? Well, your body's a kli, it's a vessel. Your soul comes down into this world to accomplish something, but it cannot accomplish what it needs to accomplish as a soul alone, like ghosts, so to speak. They can't push this, they can't touch this. We don't really believe in ghosts. You got Dybbuk's and things like that, but not the classical idea and Hollywood idea of a ghost. But it's a similar concept, very similar idea. It needs the body. Just like, for example, if you want to go from point A to point B and it's very far away, you can't walk, you take a car. The car is the way to get to where you have to go. The driver is the person inside the car, it's the soul, and the car is just a vehicle. So your body lives off your soul, but it's your vehicle. And you need it to be able to do mitzvahs and accomplish meaningful things. But it's more than just a car. Because the car, you can buy a car and sell it years later, or it can, God forbid, get destroyed if they get rid of it anyhow. Right? It's a temporary thing. Car is not something you keep your entire life normally. And you certainly don't take it with you to the world to come. But your body is different. Your body is something that's far more spiritual and has the potential to become so much like the soul, that the soul and the body can become like lovers. That's the language they use in Kabbalah, like two lovers who never separate. So, for example, when the Malach HaMavis came to take Moshe's soul away at the age of 120, couldn't get it. The body wouldn't let go of the soul, and the soul would not let go of his body, because he had perfected, he literally elevated his vessel to the level it has to be in the Messianic era and beyond. So there was no reason to have to die, because the whole reason we die in the first place is to allow the body to rot in the ground and then be rebuilt again in the resurrection of the dead, as it was before the sin of eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, so that you now have a vessel that can handle higher levels of soul, which you have access to because of higher levels of divine revelation. So this, you can read the newspapers all you want. You can watch the news on television, listen to the radio, you can go to work, you can read newspaper, you can watch whatever you want to do to keep yourself busy in this world. And this world is extremely busy with lots of things going on, lots of distractions. You can do all of that, right? But it doesn't change the fact that the whole point of being in this world is to rectify yourself and rectify the vessel, the kli. So that's what Torah is for. That hisnagdus, resistance that you feel when doing a mitzvah is the body saying, I don't like that. I'm not comfortable with that. That doesn't give me pleasure. And I'm instinctual and I want to have a good time. I want to enjoy myself physically in this world. It doesn't understand spiritual growth. I mean, how many children, when I was growing up, I remember, I didn't connect to spiritually. I didn't understand the importance of it. The world was there to be enjoyed physically. But as you grow up and you become more mature, hopefully, you start to realize the importance of spirituality. As you get older, you start to really appreciate it much more. And eventually you get to the point where you realize it's more important than anything else. So the body can learn. The body can be taught. The body can be elevated. And the whole point of learning Torah and doing mitzvahs is not simply obedience. It's not simply to become smarter. It's because this is the means that God gave to us through which we're able to rectify and really refine the body. It's like finishing school. People go to university, they go to college. There's no emphasis on your character traits when you go there. You're there to learn a profession, how to make a living. No one says, no, you can't. Anyone in this class is physics, 404, who has not yet get to the point where they no longer lose their temper and they're always nice to people. They can't come. No. As long as you're going to do the homework, keep up with the material, you're welcome, right? There are probably a lot of scientists who are not known for their good character traits because it's not a qualification. But sometimes people want to associate in the upper circles. They want to hang out with the more refined elements of society. So they go to a thing called finishing school. Finishing school is something where they teach you etiquette. And they teach you proper manners and things like that and how to behave yourself and protocol and all kinds of stuff, how many forks to put on the table, how to place them on a napkin, like this. It's incredible what has developed over time. And we have derech eretz. Derech eretz is our etiquette, but it's all based upon being godly, being b'tzam Elokim. Theirs is like, a lot of shtick and shtuyot and things like that. And some of it is well based, but it refines you. That's why it's called finishing school. In a carpenter shop, the finishing department, so to speak, is after building it. You take the rough materials and you put them together and you sand them down. And then there's part of the process where it goes and it's like really smoothed out and it's painted properly, so it looks lacquered and all that. It looks very professional and it's finished. You have finishing nails, little tiny nails, like not the big nails that hold it together, but little small nails that you can't see so much to hold things in, because you understand that there's this idea of refinement. No matter whether we're secular or religious, we understand refinement is a good thing. It makes things better. It makes things more professional a lot of times. But in this case, the refinement makes you more godly, because that's the goal. So a person who learns Torah with this idea of mind and does mitzvahs, understanding that the more I put myself into it, like too many people spend too much time trying to figure out the minimum they have to do to be able to say, I'm Yotzi. I did what I had to do. I'm off the hook. I'm going to go do my own thing right now. Chaval. Because that works, by the way. You get schar, 100%. But God doesn't lose out. He doesn't gain anything from any mitzvahs we do. So if you don't do it properly, he doesn't lose anything either, for that matter. Who's the loser by not doing the mitzvah to the full potential that they have? By being moser nefesh, self-sacrificing. We are, because it was an opportunity. It's like there's a mashal of everything today. A simple mashal would be an athlete who decides, something, it hurts to run so hard for so long. So you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to ease up a bit. I'm going to run a little bit less fast, a little bit less hard, and make it a little bit enjoyable. Now, if you're a casual runner, then that's fine. There's no competition. You're also losing out, but the gain might be more than the loss. But if you plan to run the Olympics, you plan to compete, you won't be ready. Because the other guy, he's running his kishkazot. He's doing everything he can to get to the top level. And if you're not doing the same thing, he's gonna lap you. And you won't be ready, you'll be disappointed. So you're the loser by not doing it. Same thing. If we're not putting all of ourselves into the mitzvah to do it the proper way, then we're not going to become as refined a vessel, a kli, as we could have been, which is fine. That's your free will choice. That's why it says that what you learn and you get in the world to come is what you learn and accomplish in this world. As if to say, we're going to punish you, we're going to tax you, because you did not push yourself further, you did not learn no longer. You're not going to get that later on either, for that matter. But it's more than that. We create the circumstance. It's because what happens is that if I only learn Mishnah and just a bit of Gemara, I don't push myself, I don't go higher, I don't learn to look Kabbalah, I don't keep pushing the envelope and accomplishing more, so that I'm not refining my kli. So when I go to Shemayim, God willing, later on the world to come, so then my kli is whatever I made it into to become. Now God's saying, well, I can only give you as much light into your kli as you prepared it. That's your job. Your job is to prepare the kli. My job is to give the light, but I can only give the light. I'm not going to destroy you. I'm not going to pour more light into you than you can afford to have without being destroyed. So therefore, that's the midah connected midah. It's the measure for measure. If you want to receive maximum amount of light in the world to come, you have to do the maximum you can in this world to refine your kli, your vessel, your body, and of course your soul. Because ever since the Chet Eitzadas Tavara, every soul is pagum. We're all blemished. Clear. We have shortcomings, and we have to fix them. So it's two things that happen at the same time. One is by doing the mitzvah with Mesiras Nefesh and with heart and devotion and sincerity, excuse me, that we of course rectify the soul. But the net effect is that the body also becomes refined, and that's what a tzaddik is. A tzaddik is not somebody. It's amazing how we look at these things in a very superficial way. One person looks and says, "I see an old man, or looks like an old man." Scrawny, skinny, not very strong, looks like he's weak, emaciated even, it's living a long life. That's true. It's quite miraculous. And he's making decisions on behalf of many different people, half his age and et cetera, but he doesn't have the scene of health. That's what people see, because from the world they're coming from, that's the measuring stick. But from the Torah, it's the other way around. What you're looking at is a body that's finely honed. That body that doesn't need to have a lot of food, doesn't have to have the most tasty food, doesn't waste time on things that are not important. That body that body looks more like a soul than a body. That body in this world might be small and scrawny, looks like it can barely hold the organs inside the body, right? So thin. In the next world will be huge, not fat, huge, because the vessel that they created would become visible at that point for what it really is. Even in the Messianic era, it's already going to start at that point, but way more so in the world to come, because that vessel is completed. And that's what Chadle Mashiach is coming to do. The war of Gog and Magog, and whatever we suffer, that's what's going on right now. What we're going through now, you could just be distracted by the news and let it go into your head and affect your emotions, but not change your life. You may daven a bit more because of it, or less, whatever. But we're missing the point, because whatever's happening, this is just the means. Just like Moshe going down and failing was just the means. It wasn't the goal; it was the means. And what's going on right now in history is the means. And the world won't get it. The Gentiles won't get it. They'll line up with whomever they're going to line up and do whatever they're going to do. They're not going to get it. And secular Jews don't know about it, and even religious Jews aren't familiar with the concept that much. But the person understands that all this is happening to help me become more refined. My kli, my vessel, become more refined, will approach it completely different and use it differently and accomplish a lot more because of it. And the more we do that in advance of Chalid, we're already in Chalid Mashiach, but there could be much more to come. The more we do it now, while we have the space and the time to do it, the less we have to be affected, the more protected we're going to be from Cheved Mashiach and the war of Gog and Magog. And we'll see how Torah plays an even greater role later on, B'ezras Hashem. We talk about that down the road a bit more, but that's the strategy. That's what the strategy has to be. I'm here to rectify my kli. Here is my life. Here's my opportunity. Here's what I can do to do exactly that. And the faster I work, the better it would be. That when God forbid the situation gets even worse, as it seems to be going, so then we will be able to spare ourselves a lot of the effect that others will have to go through to learn this lesson the hard way. Okay, there's a question here. I just renewed my.
Say that loud.
Not a question, it's a comment, and it's a good one. Yep, I agree. Okay.
Rabbi, there were a couple questions that came in elsewhere. One of them is, do you have a few minutes to elaborate on, like, the real urgency for people to make Aliyah now? You said so much in the beginning that that you could maybe elaborate on it a little bit, that people need to get going now and or make a plan or something. You've been talking about this for 20 years, and as other people have been too, like Rabbi Mendel Kessin and other people. But there is a sense of urgency now. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, there's been for a long time. Just that now people are starting more and more. It starts, at the core. That moves out towards the fringe more, and people more distant start to feel it. But yeah, based upon what I just said tonight, is even more obvious. Why? Because all the Sforim, all the sources, everything says that there's no place where you can rectify yourself more as a Jew than Eretz Yisrael. You just, no matter the best yeshivas in the world, outside of Eretz Yisrael, can't. They can't, especially now that the Shekhinah is moving away. Anti-Semitism is increasing around the world because the Shekhinah is leaving those places. So even the divine protection and divine assistance we enjoyed for the last several decades, that's also ending. But your soul, according to the Arizal, every Jewish soul is hewn. It's hewn from Eretz Yisrael. The nations of the world, their souls are hewn from their nations. But a Jewish soul comes from Eretz Yisrael. There's no, even if you're born in Chutz La'aretz, the soul still has to come from Eretz Yisrael, spiritually speaking, right? So therefore, you're never home unless you're in Eretz Yisrael. And everyone knows that it's that the place that you can grow the most, or you should be able to grow the most if you have a healthy, upbringing, is at home. And this is, and not just that, by the way, but even according to the Tikkun Zohar, that everyone's portion in Torah is tied to their place in Eretz Yisrael, and therefore you can't access Torah at the same level. That's why the Medrash says, "Ein Torah K'mo Torah Eretz Yisrael," right? Because the connection you have, and then the Shekhinah is right overhead, and the opening to Shemaim is only around the border of Eretz Yisrael. I can go on. If you want, we can do a class just on that, because it definitely is a class unto itself. But you simply cannot rectify your kli to the full extent you should, except in Eretz Yisrael, and that alone should be enough reason to create the sense of urgency, because time's running out on the mission. Our job to do what we're here to do, it's almost over. The time to do it, we're going to be shocked. It's like sitting in a dentist chair, thinking it's going to last another hour, and all of a sudden says, "We're done," right? What? What? We are, Except here it's in reverse, because God will say, "We're done." He said, "Wait, no, it's a bit more." No, that's it. But I wanted to fix it. No, that time has come and gone. Sorry, right?
I think people don't really believe that. People, I don't know. It's hard. It took me many years to really believe that, and I don't know why. That's resistant thinking for some reason. It's a lot of multiple reasons, I'm sure, but more than just people are being comfortable over there. That's one of them, but that's not the only reason they're holding people back. But I would like you to do a class on that, please. That would be amazing. Okay. Here's another question. Okay, go ahead. How do you perhaps see things unfolding? Because it says things will get worse before they get better. How connected is this to Pesach? Which is right. Which is right around the corner. Sorry.
Right. like right. Just right around the corner. Yeah. So,
that for the price is on the right syllable.
Yeah. Well, listen. I mean, we see examples in the past, but like I said, everything's about birur. Everything's about the best analogy I ever came up with to describe is musical chairs, right? Where the music is playing, and we're always fighting for chairs, take away another chair, and then you have more losers and then eventually gets down to a couple more people, two people, then finally the last person, and God we see in Egypt and in Babylonia and all through history, he winnows out. This idea of separation, separating the good from the bad, also happens within the nation itself. And people don't realize it, that when they're forced to make decisions to go this way, to go that way, the circumstances that force us to do that. Like, in other words, if you see our lives in the 1970s and 1980s, there was no real pressure to have to this. You could fence it, right? You just did what you want. There was no real issues pushing you at that time. And then came Intifada, and that started to increase the pressure. And now you have to make a decision, and it's got more and more and more. And that's how it got such a left. That's how we got such a division between right and left. Mm-hmm. That's not accidental. That is the direct result of God creating issues that force people to go one way or another way. When Eliyahu at Har Carmel, the famous story of Eliyahu, when he brings the fire down, they have a what do you call it? A sacrifice off, where the Baal does theirs and he does theirs, and he pours. I love it. The story is my favorite. He mocks them and pours water all over his altar and all that. Then finally the fire comes down. But he says to the Jewish people a very important thing. He says, make up your mind. Either go with God or go with the Baal. But none of this fencing. This world was made for free will. This world was to take responsibility for your choices. No fencing. God hates that the most of all. That's wishy-washy, right? Either go this way or go that way and take responsibility for your choices, because the end is coming and we need to know who is who, where they're going to be, and what to do about them. So what's getting worse, what we call getting worse in the situation, is just due process at the end of an exile that forces people to have to make decisions about what they think, who they are, where they're going to go, what they want to do next, what they believe, and then eventually the truth will come out, and people will either be happy with what they chose or very, very sad and disappointed, or worse, God forbid.
There's something else we should talk about too, because that's a very complicated subject. What happens to the people who choose the wrong way? We all want to know.
We've seen. We don't know who they are until after the fact. Right?
Well, Rabbi Nir Ben Artzi is. Do you know Rabbi Nir Ben Artzi?
Yeah.
So he says today that the left are the people who are, Hashem gave them a choice, and they decided that they were going to go against the Jewish people, and they're going to suffer at the end of history because of that. But I don't know what he really means by that. But are they going to not be considered part of the Jewish nation, or are they going to just have to be in a different status? I don't really know. But there are choices that are being made right now. And like you said, the Bearer also fits into that same concept that you were talking about earlier about refining oneself.
Right. Well, part of the whole refinement process, that's with the Erev. That's where the Erev came into the whole picture. They're part of, it's like making a soup. You throw a bunch of ingredients in. So the Erev is part of the gematria of the Erev that Gra points out is dust, because they represent the bad dust, the bad knowledge, the bad perspective. Right, and ever since the first man and woman, it's a das tov ra. It's all about tov, das tov, and das ra. Yaakov versus Esav, two different world perspectives. Where do you stand? The reason why Yaakov came out holding on to the heel of Esav was to tell the Jewish people, listen, folks, either you're leading or you're following. You'll never be walking shoulder to shoulder with him. You'll either be leading him or you'll be following him. Mm-hmm. And if you lead, you will live supernaturally and you have a wonderful life. If you follow, then you have to go through whatever he goes through. You have to live the life that he lives, which is completely natural. But the truth is, the Jewish people are never completely natural. But God does it in a way that makes it look like it's natural. So we have more illnesses, we have more financial problems, more family problems, all the issues that plague the rest of the world spill into our world as well. But at the in the end, all this getting worse, before getting better, is you see from the Chumash, it is part of that redemption process. To winnow out and to push people in the direction they need to go to be in position for the Geula one way or another way.
Okay, Rabbi, I take it you will not be
next week. And we're not doing Pesach as Hashem, so I guess the first week after Pesach we'll pick up again as Hashem.
Okay, thank you so much, Rabbi, for your valuable time.
But I'll be writing stuff and putting it up, the entire time. So anyone wants to keep reading, they keep reading as Hashem.
Thank you,
okay.
Rabbi.
Next time we speak with Hashem, we should be on the other side of Mashiach's arrival, without any more suffering, any bad, and hopefully we've gone through whatever we've gone through, and Only
Amen.
God.
Chodesh Tov, good Shabbos, and Chag Sameach. Thank you, everybody, for joining.